I know I'm slightly changing things up a little bit. The sermon usually comes later in the service, but I have a method to the madness here. There's going to be a reason that our joys and concerns and prayers are going to be later. Because this week we are in Psalms 20, and we are in the midst of our series, our 5th week on Teach Us to Pray. And this week we're going to be focused on a prayer for others. We've been through 4 weeks where we had a prayer of guidance, a prayer of trust, a prayer of confession last week, if you joined us on YouTube because of the snow, a prayer of thanksgiving. Now it's a prayer for not ourselves, but for other people. But I'm going to begin with a story. And I hope that it brings some levity, some joy before we get to the meat of the matter. I think I've told you that before in my former life, I was in the Air Force, and I spent 6 years as the proper title is an Arabic Middle East cryptologic language analyst. That's a mouthful. I was a translator. I had to learn Arabic at a place called the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in Monterey, California. And let me tell you, for the last 2 weeks, I really wish I was in Monterey because I don't think it ever got below 40 degrees there. And it never got above 80 degrees. It was like perfect light winter jacket weather all the time. And there, if you took Spanish, you learned Spanish in 6 months. If you took Hebrew or Russian, you were going to learn Hebrew or Russian in a year. If you took Arabic or Korean or Chinese, you were going to be fluent in those languages within a year and a half. Because all day, every day, from the moment you wake up at 7 in the morning when classes started, to the time that your last study hall ended at 8 p.m., all you did was learn a foreign language. And our teachers, our teaching team, were all native speakers. There was Coptic Egyptians, there was Palestinians and Lebanese, Iraqis, Jordanians, as part of this teaching team. And every month we'd deal with a different subject. It might be your family for 1 month. It could be your house for another month. But this 1 month was about science and technology. You can imagine, once a week, once a day, we'd have a speaking hour. And for a month, if you spoke about the same subject, how boring would that get? And so, I was the class clown. I decided I was going to switch it up. And we had this Jordanian professor, his name was Professor Asfor. He comes in and he asks, how does science and technology affect you in your life? And I go, Fil hakika ya ustad. In reality, professor, before I joined the Air Force, I was Amish. And he got this, what? He actually said, my mother, what was that? Mauritania, say that again. And I said in Arabic, I was Amish. He didn't know what this meant. He pulled out the dictionary to try to look up what Amish meant in Arabic. And I was like, no, cognate. It's a cognate. It's an English word. Okay. So what are the Amish? And I proceeded to describe to him how the Amish live. And he's a joyous fellow. You can see his little feet were kicking because a lot of them were very small. We had one professor, Ustad Munir, is like the human form of Yoda. Like if Yoda had a human face, it'd be Munir. He talked like him. And he actually did like the little when you would say something really good, like Yoda. He was Yoda. He was Ustad, Professor Yoda. And I would just go off on Arabic. And he'd ask me questions. And I asked him a question like, Nandor Bernamij Television, Al Jazeera Gilligan. You've watched the TV program Gilligan's Island, right? Sí, or no, sí, yes. I'm looking at my Spanish exchange student and go, sí, yes. I'm now like talking in 4 different languages. Naam is yes in Arabic, naam. Well, then I go, La hataf la nor, la sayara, laysa nina kol al shay. Mr. Robinson Crusoe, Maisha, Daisita, Jaden. Yeah, it doesn't work in Arabic. No phone, no light, no motor cars. And he's kicking himself. He's singing in Arabic. And then the speaking hour's over. He goes back to the office and he talks to the rest of the Arab professors in it. This Ian guy, you can't believe what he just told me. He just told me he was Amish. You know Ian, he's a jokester. You know, last time we talked about our house, and he said he lived in a castle with a zoo and an aquarium. I almost said Bakir al-Hadik al-Hawainat. I almost said it in Arabic. And all this stuff, you know, he's a jokester. And they thought I was completely lying to them. That there was plain folks living in the United States. They didn't believe me. But every teaching team had an American. And in he walks. What are you guys talking about? Oh, this crazy Ian guy. He told us there was Amish people living in the United States. Can you believe that there are folks that live like this in America? Well, there are those folks. What? Yeah. And he proceeds to describe, to ask for the rest of the team what I had told them only an hour or two before. And then he goes, where's Ian from? Well, he's from Pennsylvania. That's where the Amish are from. And then Ustad Asfor goes, I got something I got to do. Honor is such a big thing in the Arab countries that he walked out of the office and he walked to our classroom and I hear and he opens the door. Can I speak to Ian? Oh gosh. I was being called to the principal's office. I've never been called to the principal's office. Well, I've been called to the principal's office just once. I wasn't always a saint, Denny. I had a couple bad runs. And he pulls me out and he goes, Ian, I have to apologize to you. I'm so sorry. What are you sorry for? I thought that you were Amish, that you were joking and lying to us. But you really are Amish. Ustad Philippe told us that they exist, that they live in Pennsylvania, and you're from Pennsylvania, and you were Amish before joining the Air Force. Ya Ustad, I was never Amish. I just wanted to change what we were talking about. I mean, I sung Gilligan's Island theme song in Arabic in front of all of you. Now it's on YouTube. Trying to talk around things. In Arabic, they called it circumlocute. If you didn't know the word, you would use other words to sort of talk around and describe it. And, you know, talking about a television in Arabic, without saying the word in Arabic, the word for television is television. You know an Arabic word. Congratulations, give yourself a hand. You know what the word television is. And he immensely apologized. I told him the truth, and we continued on. And for the rest of the week, just these little conversations about what was on. You didn't have a car. What did you drive? Well, we had a horse, and I think I said the word wagon because Arabic doesn't. The word for Arabic of buggy is boogie. So you know a second Arabic word now. But I'm glad that, but I'm also sad. It's sort of bittersweet that teaching team from Morocco and Egypt and Lebanon and Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, that their first introduction to Anabaptism was a jovial speaking hour in 2002 telling them that I was, can you imagine me with the beard? I can't grow the beard, actually. The beard and the hat and the haircut. Oh man, that's not military regs right there. The haircut would have gotten me in trouble by my drill sergeants. But I'm glad that that was their first introduction to Anabaptism. Because 4 years later, they would have been introduced to it in a different way. When in October of 2006, The incident just a few hours to the east of us at the West Nickel Mines Amish School made the national news. That would have been their first introduction. And I'm glad that it wasn't the tragedy that introduced them to their way of life. But I'm kind of sad too, because the reaction of our brothers and sisters in the Amish community to the perpetrator and his family and friends was something that was completely amazing and a movement of the Holy Spirit. Because a community that could have turned inward, that could have entirely focused in on themselves, wasn't. They were concerned about forgiveness and the well-being of the folks that were impacted by the event, including the person that was the nexus for it. And that brings us to Psalm 20. Because the first thing I noticed in Psalms 20, there's not an I statement at all in this chapter. For the last 4 weeks, a confession of guidance, of our confessions of our sin, for trust and for thanksgiving, usually focuses in on us. But our prayer life also needs to have a healthy, good dose of praying for others. There's not an I statement there. The Lord answered, you in the days of trouble. The name of God of Jacob protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion. May he remember all your offerings and regard with favor your burnt sacrifices, Selah. May he grant your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. May we shout for joy over your victory, and in the name of our God set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now, here's the only I statement. Now, I know the Lord will help his anointed. It's an I statement, but it's not really focused on me. It's really focused on what God is going to do for his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with mighty victories by his right hand. Some take pride in chariots and some in horses, but our pride is in the name of the Lord our God. They will collapse and will fall, but we shall rise and stand upright. Give victory to the King, O Lord. Answer us when we call. There are but one I statements there, and even then it's not focused on the I. Almost every phrase is punctuated by either we or you or he. It's not something that's a mirror focused in on us. It is one that is focused on others and the goodness of God. And so my question is, how is your prayer life? Where is it focused? No doubt that it ought to be focused at times and at points on us through guidance and confession and trust and thanksgiving. But a significant portion of our prayer life needs to be focused on others. I was all amped up. Christmas Eve service. We had 149 people here in attendance, and I got home, and I was like a toddler after a nap, drinking Mountain Dew and eating nothing but Skittles and Sour Patch Kids. I couldn't fall asleep. I mean, it's Christmas Eve night. I maybe have acted like a little kid on Christmas Eve night. I started reading a book, 100 pages. So a simple thing. I finished within the day, 24 hours. That's how much I jacked up and amped up I was on Christmas Eve night. And that's how awesome and great this book was by Tom Rainier, pastor and author and the former president and CEO of Lifeway Christian Bookstores. The book is called The Autopsy of a Deceased Church. And in the book, he goes through about 12 different markers, 12 different signs, 12 different symptoms of a church that's on hospice. Some of it is prayer, that a church that doesn't pray is usually one that's going to shut its doors within a few years or a decade. And luckily, we are focused these 7 weeks between New Year's and Lent on prayer. But there was one common thing that Tom Rainier found as he looked at all these shuttered churches. Every one of these churches had some level of this problem before they died. A significant number of the members moved the focus from others to themselves. And when a church moves in that direction, it's headed for decline and death. A church cannot survive long term where members are focused on their own preferences. We know what they are. Here's the list that he gave. That members are focused on their music style. That they're focused on their desired length of sermons and their worship service order. They're focused on their desired color and design of the building or the pews or the drapes or the carpets. They're focused on activities and programs that will impact them, and they are focused on the needs of themselves rather than needs of the entire community. When the focus turns inward, then we aren't doing what we're supposed to do. I've known that the leadership team here has heard me say it time and time again. I usually ask 3 questions. Is it biblical? Is it purposeful? Is it relational? And a church and people that focus on others builds relationships, meets its purpose, which is Matthew 28:19, to go into the world making disciples. It's on that window right over there. But when we turn inward, we aren't building relationships. We aren't serving our purpose. And we are not taking affirmative steps to follow the greatest command, or the great commission that Christ gave his disciples before he ascended to heaven. Yes, our prayers need confession and trust and thanksgiving and petitions for guidance. But our prayers must also focus on the community that we're part of and the community that we will be part of as well. The other thing that, maybe you stop here. Who is the you then that you are praying for? Who are the others? Who are the members of your community that you are praying for? Can I go back to that Amish school? Because their prayers and their efforts were for someone and his family and friends that hurt them, that caused 6 young girls to die. The last one died of 2024 of her injuries from 20 years ago. 20 years of pain and suffering, and this is a community that prayed and was for the perpetrator of these actions. We must not think evil of this man, is one of the quotes. He had a soul and now stands before a just God, is another one of the quotes. They comforted the father of the killer. They were at his funeral and they invited the wife and family to their funeral. They held the dad for hours as he wept over what his son had done. When They could have been focused in on themselves. They focused in on the community that they did not see themselves part of just a few hours ago. These are tangible acts of grace that was extended by this community to someone that drastically and forever hurt them. Are there folks in your community that drastically has hurt you? Are there folks in your community that you do not see eye to eye with on 99% of things that you can pray for? I remember the funeral of my father 12 and a half years ago. We went to my old childhood church and had his viewing and his services. We went to the graveside to put him in the ground and see him for that final time. And we progressed back to the church in its fellowship hall to have that fellowship meal. When someone learned where I was interning at for the summer, and boy, did the demeanor completely change. The tone and the words and the attitude. 12 and a half years later, there's still a portion of me that wants to throw some four-letter, we call them military enhancers. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Part of me still wants to throw those words at her. I just buried my dad within the last hour, and this is how you're approaching me as your brother? And if this is the representation of Christ, I got to be honest. I don't want anything to do with this. The hardest part was when she comes to mind, is to pray for grace and blessing and mercy for her and her loss of her husband and her health needs, and for her to experience the goodness of God, even though she hurt me all those years ago. Are there folks in your community that have hurt you that you still need to pray for? Even if there's a portion of you that says, I don't want to talk to them, I don't want to see them, every time I think about them, a negative thought comes up, they still need your prayers, including the current environment. There are folks that we don't agree with, if it's politics or administration or individuals that work for certain agencies or individuals that are protesting those things. They were all made in the image of God. And God robed himself in flesh and died for every single one of them. And that every person, if we agree with them or disagree with them, needs our prayers and the mercy and grace of Jesus Christ. That is hard to do. Incredibly hard. And even as I'm saying this, there's this angel on one shoulder and this devil on one shoulder that says, you know what you ought to do to that lady. And there's that devil on the one shoulder that goes, but you really know what you want to say to that lady. But we still must let our better angels persevere. Because it's really impossible to hate someone that you pray blessings upon. Who do you ought to pray for? Even if it's someone that you vehemently disagree with. And how are you praying for God to answer. I know how I like to pray. I like to give God what I think is the best option. Ian's figured this out. Lightning has struck my head. The light bulb has gone off. I know all the answers. Lord, just listen to me. I could be your right-hand guy. Left-hand guy. Let's make it left-hand guy. Right-hand guy is reserved to Jesus. I could be your left-hand guy and whisper to your ear all the answers that I think you need. But really, we need to pray for God's will be done as in the Lord's Prayer. And we need to ask for protection. In Psalms 20, it specifically goes through protection and strength, remembrance, and faithfulness. These aren't specific things. These are the ways that we could have the person get closer to God and let God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Later in the service, we will go through our joys and concerns. There's a little space at the bottom of your bulletin with the small lines. There are new joys and concerns brought up. Please grab a pen or a pencil, and we could write them down so that we could pray for this community throughout the week, for the joys that Christ has brought, and for the concerns that we could lift up before Christ's throne. There are prayer sheets of everyone that needs prayer in the back by where Rick is standing, and they're also in our newsletter. Some of you received it digitally, but there are copies in the back. There are a sheet of prayer requests in those things. But as we go about this week, my hope and my prayer for us is that we could lift one another up in our prayers, even those that we would never pray for before in our lives. Amen.